Welcome to the Connected Teamwork podcast by Growth Leaders Network. How do we learn to truly thrive together? How do we stay connected to our authentic selves, each other, and our purpose as a team, especially when challenged? How do we unlock the deeper levels of group intelligence? Enjoy this episode of the Connected Teamwork podcast and learn practical tools to evolve the connectedness of your team to its next level.
Well, hello there. I'm Carson Heady, and welcome to the Connected Teamwork podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jason Thomas, Vice President at Salesforce. And what's great is Jason is here in St. Louis with me, but yet we've never met. But because of this amazing platform, we're able to come together today. Jason, how are you today?
Doing great, Carson. How about yourself, man?
I am doing fantastic, really excited, especially as we're starting to get this spring-like weather here in the Midwest, if it can figure out what it wants to do. I'm excited about today's conversation, and here's why. So a little bit about Jason. He is a sales leader who's obsessed with winning. So I know we're going to get along very, very well. But winning customers' trust, winning customers' business, understanding their objectives, and also going after his team's audacious goals. That really got me fired up when I was prepping for today's session. He's focused on serving others, knowing that Zig Ziglar was right when he said, you can have anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. I love that so much. I speak a lot about going out and finding what looks like a win for everybody in your sphere and then working diligently to deliver that. Jason began his career in social services and counseling, and also remains a practitioner of change, both individually and at an organizational level. He's a first-line sales leader with a world-class team of sellers at obviously one of the largest and fastest-growing enterprise software companies. He's on hiatus from Hardway MBA, an interview podcast where he empowered ambitious corporate professionals with a real-world business education. So if you can't tell already, Jason and I have some really cool synergies that I think we're going to be able to strike a chord with today. But where I'm really interested in taking this as well is some of the unique experiences that Jason has had along the way, what has really informed his opinion and perspective and philosophies around how to create connected workforce, connected team culture. So, Jason, thank you for being with us today. Would love to hear from you. Any thoughts that you just want to share off the cuff and how you think about connected teamwork?
Well, first of all, Carson, thanks for having me. Your team on this show is amazing. I've really enjoyed the interaction so far, and it's great to meet, at least virtually. I've read a lot of LinkedIn posts, seen you on here, and so this is pretty cool. So how do I think about connected teams? So I think we've got a saying, and I don't think it's specific to Salesforce, but if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, take the team, bring a team. That has been true in every organization I've ever worked. It's true in my family. If I want to get somewhere really quick, I just jump in the car and I go. If I actually want to stay there a while, I better bring the three people that matter most to me. So I think about that as it's a soundbite, but it resonates with everybody because we've all been there. And then I spend a lot of time thinking about the how. How do you do that in a way that's sustainable, brings value to all of those people, and keeps all the people that matter for that thing that you're doing actually engaged?
Well said. I'm curious, obviously I know you've had a solid trajectory as a, top producer and then now moving into leadership. How has that background, as being an IC and then moving into a very high functioning team, how has that informed your philosophies as a leader? What have you kind of taken from your experience being an IC into being a team lead?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to me in sales that as an individual contributor, I looked at my job as leading teams. Every account that I worked with had a team of people that focused on that account. I would also often call them pursuit teams in that context. And sometimes, depending on the role, it was a vastly different group of people. And then sometimes it was a very similar group of people. But either way, you were in pursuit of a common goal within that account. And as an individual contributor, I thought a lot about how do I bring these people together, 5, 6, 10 to 12 people who care about this account, get them to think about the account in a way that will resonate with me. So we're trying to help the customer and not just extract value. Like, we sell things. So we do like to get the high fives and actually get the win at the end. But you only really get there when you're helping the customer. And bringing that into a team lead, I start by thinking, okay, I need to bring these people together. I've got 8 people on my team this year. They need to be a functional team that operates without me there. So if I happen to be gone, it really doesn't matter. Like, that's how you know you're a good leader. But then how do I get them to take that same mentality of I am leading a team or multiple teams in pursuit of our customers' objectives? So I spend a lot of time telling stories, talking about past wins, and thinking about how do we infuse this into the way that we operate as a group, as individuals, more than as a group. Because none of those 8 people that I work with fall on the same customer. They're all, we say we break the huddle, we all scatter.
Jason, it's exceptionally powerful. A couple of things you said really resonated with me there. Getting your team to a point where they don't need you or don't rely on you so much. There are a lot of managers that are very ego driven or almost afraid to get to a point where their team doesn't need them as much. They need or want or feel the need to be on the foreground, on the forefront, leading the charge, being the hero. But a great leader is looking for ways to be the hero maker and empowering and enabling their team to be successful in their own right, helping them see around corners based on past experiences. I love the fact that you expounded on, being able to be a storyteller. I spend a lot of my time observing. I ask my team to invite me along for virtual team meetings, or it could be with customer meetings. And a lot of that time, it's not because I want to, nitpick or pick up on minutia. It's I want to observe their leadership. Because as you said, and I think that's a call to all individual contributors, there is a definite, I spend a lot of time talking about leading from every seat. And frankly, as an account executive, which you and I have both been, you're in essence leading and orchestrating a wide number of activities, and that touches a lot of people. So there's a lot of responsibility there. The last thing I'd say on that thread is that making sure that everybody understands that one person can impact company culture, team culture. I think it's really important to understand the role and the place that you can have when you're looking for gaps, whether it's gaps that your customers have, gaps that your team has, gaps that your organization has, or that your leadership talks about. Finding ways to shore up those gaps can really help you and your team be successful, and being transparent with your team so that everybody feels like they're a part of the direction that you're rowing. You want everybody in the boat, and you want them all rowing the right way. Let's talk more about the talking to your team about your experiences, because I think that's a super valuable thing that a lot of leaders, need to really get grounded in. You're in your role for a reason, right? Whatever role you're in, you've earned that role for a very distinct reason. And I'm of the philosophy that everybody's got kind of their unique strengths, skills, superpowers. And so as leaders, we want to go out and figure out what those are for each of our people. But we also want to be able to, from our vast experience, be able to articulate that to the team so that they can improve. What are your thoughts, Jason? What have you seen really resonate the most, as you've built a connected team culture with what you've been able to share and put in place for the team? What have been some big learnings for you?
Yeah, so I think it changes over time, and with the maturity of the team as a whole and the maturity of the individual contributors that you're working with. And right now I've got a really, really big range of folks that have been with us for a long, long time, and some folks that are 3 or 4 months in. And as a collective, we've been together for about 4 weeks. I had the last team, we were together for pretty much 2 years straight. We had a few changes in there, but so the beginning of February, we had some pretty big turnover. Not turnover. We shifted the deck chairs around a little bit, as large companies like to do.
Yes, I know.
Yes, we do. So it varies, but I think some common threads that matter is details. So I like to tell, I've got a couple of accounts that I was fortunate I did really, really well with. And, I remember the minutia of how we got from, not a great place to a wonderful place with those accounts. And when I tell the stories about how we did that, when I talk about it, I don't just talk about like the end result, because the end result that's fine. But you can go in your CRM, you can see what the end result is. Nobody cares. How did you do that is a lot more important. So I skip the end. Let's talk about the how. Let's talk about the very beginning. Let's talk about how did you earn the right to get to some of those middle places that feel like big asks, impossible asks today, and get to the details of, how do you build relationships? Who did you figure out how to build them with? And then what did you do when things failed? What did you do when things were completely sideways and nothing looked right? I spent a lot of time there, like the really uncomfortable stuff that I didn't enjoy going through. And then I also have, I hope we all have this. I don't think I'm the only one. I have accounts and situations that didn't go my way. I have failed miserably in this job and every other job I've ever had. And I tell those stories too. Because it's not just my failure. I did things wrong. But man, if I can do that and somebody else learns from it, maybe they won't have to experience quite the same heartache from it.
That is incredibly powerful, Jason. I appreciate you sharing that. I think, part of connected teamwork is about being human and being real and being authentic and genuine with your team and helping them understand, like, hey, I made some of these mistakes, so you don't have to. Like, this is what I learned. I think there's a ton of value in doing a post-mortem on a project or a deal that went south. I think there's a ton of value in really spending time celebrating the work that goes into some of these motions. And that's true of any project out there. There are always going to be things that don't go our way. There's always going to be things that, are sudden big changes. And that's where I want to go next. We're going to take a short break. But I want to spend some time after the break talking about change. In the last few years, obviously there's been a lot of shift, and we have teams that are spread out all over the place. The majority, none of my team is here in St. Louis anymore. They're elsewhere. Same thing with massive changes that transpire in organizations. I've been through the same thing. I'm sharing with you in the green room before we hopped on that at the beginning of the fiscal year for me and my team, the team got gutted. It was very significantly changed, and a lot of people went in different directions. But it doesn't change a lot of the fundamental dynamics, right? So I want to talk a little bit more about how, as a leader, you can be that steady hand on the wheel with connected culture and keep bringing things back. So we'll talk about that and be back here momentarily, right after a short break.
You are listening to the Connected Teamwork podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Do you want to learn more about building the next level of connectedness in your team? Please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
So I'm here today with Jason Thomas, Regional Vice President at Salesforce, and we're talking about connected teamwork and how he has not only been able to guide his team, but also move with the ebbs and flows and share his experiences. Jason, I want to talk about just the last few years. Obviously, you and I have both been in tech and cloud in a time where there's rapid changes. There was a pandemic and everybody shifted the way that they worked, not only us, but our customers. And meeting people where they are looks very radically different than it did several years ago. What are your thoughts on how, as a leader, we can effectively navigate change, be that voice of reason and calm and keep a steady hand on the wheel during massive change?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. And my mind's kind of going all over the place to figure out where to start. I think this year I've been talking to my team a lot about two different sides of sales, the internal game and the external game. And you can break these things up in many, many different ways. But when I think about how I deal with change, so the first thing is I have to deal with it. If I'm going to help anybody else through it, that internal piece has to come first. It's kind of like in the airplane when they say put the oxygen mask on yourself so you can help your neighbor. Like the oxygen mask for me is, a set of routines that I do almost every day. Prayer, meditation, some movement practices, exercise that I have found to be they are fundamental to my life. If I want to be a good human, I must do these things. If I'm okay being a mediocre human, I can skip. That's first. And then like any of the changes that have come in the last few years, whether they're completely outside of anybody's control, a global pandemic comes to mind, or somebody in your organization had control of this and you might have done it differently, but you didn't have control of it. So here it is. The first thing is to start to accept it. You don't have to like it, but you have to accept that this is the reality that we live in now, and it will also change. So a temperance of any kind of reactivity, that really has not served me well when I have been highly reactive and bothered by whatever is coming at me. So if I can keep my own emotions not gone, because I have them, but keep them at a level that's reasonable, and then be honest about them with myself first. Then when I'm talking to the team, I'm able to bring that perspective. I can bring the perspective of this is frustrating. Clearly, we're talking about a global pandemic and trying to guide a team through that's insane. Nobody I knew had ever done it before.
Right.
So thinking about just the change that happened a month or so ago, we're all in this together is one common thread of a message. Everybody's experience is still going to be a little bit different though. And just reminding folks that they have more control than they believe they have most of the time, if they'll grab that internal locus of control and play the internal game the whole time. The other thing that I think a lot about is I've got mentors who have been very, very positive all the time. And I think about a good balance of that versus if there's a dose of reality where something's just negative, it doesn't, the fake positive doesn't land very well. But finding the positive, finding the silver lining, and helping other folks do it, that does, when it's real, when it's authentic. So I think some of the things I just rambled through real quick, find my own center, get grounded in that, get grounded in what's actually important to me, take that to the team in an authentic way, show the positive, demonstrate the positivity that is in front of you. And I think the last thing I would say is listen. Your team's going to have their real stuff. Some of it's feelings, some of it's observations that you missed. Listen and learn and help them learn in the process.
Jason, first off, I just continue throughout the course of this conversation, and keep in mind to the audience, Jason and I have not communicated before in this format, or face to face or virtually, and so it's a lot of back and forth messages. But it's interesting to just get your perspective on this and look at all the similarities. First off, I love the fact that you start with how do I get to a place myself, and there's a foundation that you've already established that better prepares you for these types of situations. Yeah. Faith, exercise, taking care of you so that when these things inevitably do happen, you can very quickly acknowledge what's transpiring. And you can also get to a place where you're preparing yourself on how you're going to broach this topic and adjust with the change. How are you going to pivot? The other element too, as a leader, it's not about whitewashing the issue. It's not about talking to your team and almost ignoring these challenges or roadblocks. You got to sit in the angst and the pain with them. You got to listen.
Yeah.
You got to understand how this is impacting other people. Understand the impact. And the best way to do that is by asking and listening, and don't avoid the touchy subjects. And I can say that of customer situations all the way to colleagues, to leadership. If there is an angsty situation, you got to sit in it. But it will make you better and stronger as a result. And so understanding the impact that is being had on people as a result of the change, sometimes acknowledging, or as Brene Brown says, embrace the suck, and make sure that, like, hey, yeah, this situation is not ideal, but we've got a few choices here. There are things that we can control. Let's make sure that we are in control of that, and that we have the best possible outcome out of whatever is going to transpire. So I love the way you framed that up. Keeping in mind that, our audience is a, very diverse group of global leaders. Jason, I'd love to get your thoughts on, I highly doubt that very many leaders out there have the exact connectedness quotient on their team that they would want. And regardless of even how good you're feeling with your connectedness quotient on your team, there are lots of ebbs and flows. There are things that transpire. There is attrition, people taking different roles. There are people that may have gotten turned down for a promotion or that raise, or people that are in fear of changes, layoffs, things of that stature. People are coming from a lot of different places that sometimes, even as leaders, we're not tapped into. We don't know all the things that our people are grappling with. What's some practical advice that you could give leaders today on things that they could do today to increase their connectedness quotient on their team?
Yeah. So one thing I just started doing about a month ago, I decided that at the beginning of every team meeting, we're going to take a moment or two. And we've been doing one of two things. One, like a minute of silence and just kind of mindfulness as a way to help folks on the team and model for the team. This is a way to do this thing and play that internal game. And the other thing is take a minute of gratitude. So you're sharing with someone else what might be coming to mind. That's something that's it's a little external. It's a little uncomfortable, frankly, the first time I did it. I've had other leaders that have done it very, very successfully and kind of shown me that you're not going to look like a fool doing this, because I really appreciated it as an individual. It was still awkward when I did it for the first time. So that's one thing that is I'm working on in the moment. I think the biggest thing is, I'm very diligent about having time with my team. My team is fully distributed. I have one person in St. Louis this year. It's the first time I've had somebody in St. Louis. So I'm excited. I spend those one-on-ones every week. I reschedule them all the time. I do not miss them. It's 30 minutes that's yours, not mine. And I may ask you some questions, but I ask them for you. And so that's like a very structured, very important thing to me. I've actually had folks that left my team say, I didn't realize that was possible, and I value it more than you know. Like, it seems like a simple thing to me. The other thing is I'm trying to I think about getting in front of customers. I'm just as excited to get in front of my team. And let's know each other for real. Outside of the work context, let's build enough trust that you're willing to open those doors. You never have to. I mean, that relationship, it can't be forced. But I try really hard, and that means finding ways to, send a handwritten note, just like you might to a customer. Sending little things when they're having life events. I've got a particular book that was very important to me as I had 2 kids. And now a lot of the folks on my team are about that age. They're having kids. Guess what? Everybody gets this book. Little things. It's outside my job. They don't have to read it. They can throw it away. It's fine. I think done consistently over time, it starts to build a real relationship. And it starts to show, I care about you more than as an employee. I do care about you as an employee. It is important that we do this job together that we have. And I know that for you to do your best work, you have to bring your best self. And that means more thinking about this more than just, employee boss stuff. My favorite bosses, I could call them right now, might not have talked to them for a year or two. They'd answer the phone. We'd talk for an hour if we had. That's what I'm going for.
Yeah. This episode is gold, Jason. I really appreciate that sharing. And, I think, my takeaway from what you just said is really the little things, they add up and they become the big things, that way that you make people feel in that experience goes a long way. And it takes seconds to recognize somebody, to write back and say, hey, this was a great email. Think about this way, or showing that you care about their career trajectory and them as a person. I had two really important lessons. One, a former manager and mentor and friend of mine who really instilled in me the importance of, just because you feel like the business matters and there's pressure on you to run the business, don't jump into the business on these one-on-ones. Open with that ability to get your team talking and share what's top of mind for them. It could totally change the construct of that one-on-one, but it's worth it, because if they take you down a path of something that is really important to them and you spend time on that topic with them, that will go a long, long way. And the other one being, really when you think about, connected teamwork and how we as leaders can show up, it's really important to know that it takes seconds to send a message or to recognize folks. That feeling sticks with people forever. And so I think it's critical to make sure that people feel good about being a part of the team. They feel like their voice is heard and that they are seen, their work is seen. That's how you're ultimately going to cultivate connectedness in teams. We're coming up with just a couple of minutes left, Jason. I'd love to open it up if there's any other thoughts or experiences that you'd like to share, whether it's been learnings from, something that didn't necessarily go as planned that wound up leading to improved connectedness within your team, or just any other anecdotes or philosophies or lessons that you subscribe to that have helped you in creating that culture.
Yeah. I'm sure I had plenty of failures that didn't go as planned.
Well, we all.
I'm sure we all do. I'm thinking about, so we had an event that we were working on last year, and a couple actually, and one in particular that we were working so hard to get the right customers there, just so hard. And then and nobody wanted to go to this thing. I don't know what it was. I don't know if we had the wrong people. It doesn't really matter to the rest of it. We kind of threw in the towel and said, it's paid for. We're going to take whoever comes. So just invite anybody, get somebody there. And then we all showed up. And it ended up being very much a team event where customers were just kind of on the fringes, which is, while the customers were there, we made them the center of attention to the extent that they could deal with it. And then the team rallied together around how much work they'd done to get here, and that it didn't land the way we wanted, but it was fine. That team ended up we ended up having a great couple of days together, and actually did some QBR activities, which were part of the plan. But the QBR was so much more exciting and engaging because they'd done so much work that nobody really had what they wanted when we started the thing. I was elated that everybody got there and got along so well. I was totally surprised that we didn't kind of see the big gray cloud for the big gray cloud, and we actually saw all the silver lining. It was a really neat moment.
I think it's amazing that really in all that, sometimes you got to make the most out of the situation. Things are going to go awry, they're going to be amiss. But if you can capitalize on events, especially to be together, I think if anything, the pandemic and the switch to remote work or hybrid work has taught us to be very, very grateful for the times that we do get face-to-face time with people, with customers, with colleagues, with leadership. I think those things are even more meaningful and impactful now than they've ever been. And so I love the fact that you were able to kind of make the most of that. There's a lot that, we could probably wax poetic on, just even doing team meetings with 30, 40 people. And sometimes, if there's a lot of people that aren't on video and, there's a lot of people that aren't speaking up when you're giving prompts to speak, sometimes it's challenging to know if, what you're doing as a leader is resonating. And that's why I think it's also important not just to do kind of those one-to-many, but the importance of the one-to-one, spending time with people and illuminating them to the experiences that you had or the things that you wish you had known when you were in their shoes. A lot of us have experience having been in the role that we managed. And if you don't, that makes it all the more important to really listen and understand the terrain and the landscape of what they're grappling with day to day. Jason, this was fantastic. Really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you and learn from you today. Any parting words before we sign off?
Thank you. I mean, you're like I said at the beginning, your team's been amazing. I hope somebody in the audience gets a nugget here. You can put it in your habits and put it to work.
I love it. Jason, thanks so much. Appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining us today for the Connected Teamwork Podcast. We'll see you again next week, every Monday here at 2:00 Central, noon Pacific. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Take a moment to reflect on what you learned today that can help build your team. Also, if you like, think about one of your team members and what you appreciate about them. Let them know. Enjoy connecting more deeply to what is great about them. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.